So a warm welcome to you guys again. I hope that everyone is okay. So let's talk money, okay? Financial maths is gonna be divided into some bit of grade 11 work. Okay. Now in terms of grade 11 work, we learned about simple interest. We also learned about compound interest. Okay. Simple and compound interest. So by now you should be comfortable with that. But then in case you forgot, right, simple and compound interest, we're just gonna revisit that. Then now in terms of grade 12, now also in grade 11 there was compound and simple decay. So it was interest and decay, right? So because you are dealing with financial growth, finance growth and decay, ne? So we also learned about that. And then now in grade 12, what we're gonna just try to introduce, that is kind of like new, is going to be future value. What we introduce is future value and present value. These are the things that we just introduced to you. So we're dealing with annuities in grade 12, but then maybe let's go back to grade 11 a bit just to revisit some of these concepts. Now, what is interest, right? We started learning about interest back in grade 6 or 7, right? Interest, this is money added to your original amount. So this is money added to your original investment, to your original investment. Okay, so this means that if I borrow you 20 rands, you can't bring it back to me as 20 rands. You must add something just for the fact that I borrowed you. So you must add maybe a 5 rand or a 10 rand, you see. So then that will mean that that money you are giving me my original amount, which was the 20 rand, plus some bit of interest, which is the money that you added. So if I borrowed you 20, right? When you pay me 25 rands, that means that the money that you are paying me, right, has the original amount plus some interest. Now, how much is the interest there? So the interest there will be 5 rands, right? Because my original amount is 20 rands. The one you added on top, it was 5 rands. Okay, so that means that you are paying me. So this is the accumulated amount is gonna be the original plus the interest. Now I've just told you that the interest is 5 rands. I told you that it is 5 rands in terms of money, in terms of rands. I can also tell you this interest in terms of percentage. And then how can we do that? If we take the 5 rands, right, you divide it by the 20 rands, and then you multiply by 100. You find that you can have 1/4 multiplied by 100, which is going to give us 25%. So I wanted to say times by 100 is fine. So we get 25%. So what does this mean? This means that you paid me 25% interest. So now I'm saying the same interest but in terms of percentage. So it means you paid me 25% interest. 25% interest means that you paid me 25% more than the money that I gave you. 25% of the money that I gave you, right? Because 25% of 20 rands is gonna be 5 rands. So interest can be described in terms of rands, it can be described in terms of percentage, right? So in most cases, in all the questions you're going to be dealing with, the interest is going to be given in terms of percentage, okay? So if they tell you that it was 2% simple interest, 3%, 5%, you should understand that it is money just expressed in the form of percentage. Now, the two interest rates that that we deal with, right? We're dealing with simple, and then we simple interest, and then we're dealing with compound interest. Now, maths lit students will tell you that they don't use formulas when they're calculating simple interest and compound interest. That is because they understand it logically to say what is simple interest, what is compound interest. Now, we might not have time to maybe like go through it manually, ne? But you know what? One of these good days we shall look at it manually. Right now, we're just gonna proceed to the formulas that we have learned already. So for simple interest, you have learned that if you want to calculate the accumulated amount, so this is in terms of growth. So if you are looking at growth, right? If you are looking at growth, if you want to get the accumulated amount after a certain period of time, you use the formula. Use the formula A is equals to P into 1 plus IN. And then for compound interest, we use A is equals to P into 1 plus I to the power of N. So these two formulas are what you use if you want to find the amount of money you have after a certain time, right? As an example, let's say Peter invests 5,000 rands into a bank, offering him 6% interest rate per annum. Okay, let's say simple interest. Simple interest per annum. How much maybe will he have? How much will he have in, let's just say, in 6 years? Right? So, quite a nice simple question because we're dealing with simple interest. The most important thing is to identify your variables. Now, since he invested 5,000, that means it's the money that he starts with. And the money that you start with, or rather your initial investment, right? We call it your principal amount. So that is why here we would say that this is your P, this is the value of P that is given. And then we know that the interest given is 6%, a simple interest, so we know that is 6%, but we need to get to the habit of converting every interest rate we are given to decimal format. So you say 6 divided by 100, so that should give you around 0.06, okay? And then 6 years tells you that these are the number of years that you're working with. So in this case, it will be earning interest for 6 years. That means, yeah, N is going to be 6. So when we use the formula, right, we can then say, okay, A would be equal to, now the principal amount is 5,000. So we put that in, and then we say 1 plus, what is the interest? Remember that it's 0.06 multiplied by the 6 years, right? Then you probably are going to get your answer there. So I don't know how much you get, right? Please do try to work it out and just comment for me the answer that you have there, okay? And then next, right, this one has to deal with compound interest. Now for compound interest, when you're dealing with growth, meaning the amount of money you have after a certain time, right, and it's increasing, it can be compounded a bit of number of times in a year. So if it is compounded annually, right? If it's compounded annually, we have to divide by our interest by 1, okay? You divide the interest rate that you have by 1, but if it is compounded semi-annually, if you compound it semi-annually, then that means you divide your interest by 2. Sometimes they can say half yearly, by the way. They can say half yearly. Okay, that means you divide your interest by 2. Okay, so this means this formula actually for compound interest, it gets a bit modified. Instead of working with it as A is equals to P into 1 plus I, we can rather write it in this form. We can say A is equals to P into 1 plus I over M over N times M. Now what is M? M is going to be the compounding period. Compounding period. Okay, so why is it important that we take into account the compounding period? This is because if your interest is compounded, that means that your money can earn interest not only once a year. Simple interest, it just ends you just earn interest once a year. For example, to make it easy, if you've invested, let's just say you invested 500 rands into a bank. If you are choosing simple interest, your money is gonna be growing at the end of the year. So meaning at the end of the year, if maybe you are getting an interest of 20 rands, you're gonna get that 20 rands at the end of the year. Then in the second year, you are still gonna get 20 rands. In the third year, you are still gonna get 20 rands. You understand? So that is how you are earning interest. They use the original amount to get the interest that you're gonna get in that year. So they say, Manna, you invested 500, so it means you're gonna get 20 rand interest at the end of the year. So if we say 20 over 500, and just to look at that interest in terms of percentage, right? You multiply by 100, so this will be 1, this will be 5. Now 20 divided by 5 is 4. So that means it's 4%. It means your money is earning 4% annually, simple interest. Okay, so you get 20 rands after each year. All right. Now it's gonna want us to go through this manually. Okay, but understand that you're getting 20 rands each year. It doesn't change. But if you are doing compound interest for the same interest rate, 4%, the first year you are also gonna get 20 rand. For the first year, your interest is gonna be 20 rands. So they will give you 500 plus 20, which is 520. But for the second year, your interest that you're gonna earn is not gonna be 20, but it's gonna be 4%. It's gonna be 4% of 520. You understand? It's gonna be 4% of 520 rands. That is the new interest you're gonna get in the second year. Whereas for simple interest, remember the first year you got 20 rands, right? Which means you had 520. But in the second year, you are still gonna get 20 rands because they just simply say 4% of the initial 500. You understand? There is no change. But then for compound interest, each year your interest is accumulating based on the balance of the previous year. Okay, so I hope that is clear. So simple interest and compound interest, they are not the same. For the first year, they can be the same, but as you go from year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, your money grows faster if it is through compound interest. Now, unlike simple interest, again, the other difference between simple interest and compound interest is that compound interest, your money could be earning more than once in a year. For example, if it is compound interest, compounded semi-annually. If they said compounded semi-annually, what is going to be happening there? If they said compounded semi-annually, and how is it going to differ from simple interest? For the first year, after 6 months, they say, remember you invested 500, right, as your principal amount. They just say, okay, what is 4% of 500? they get that is 20. So it means after 6 months in your bank account, you're going to be having 520. And then after another 6 months, in the same year, after another 6 months, they say, okay, 520. What is 4% of 520? Okay, they say, what is 4% of 520? So to get 4% of 520, simply say 4 over 100, then you multiply it by the 520. You get what? Around 20.8. You get 20.8. Then they're gonna say, okay, so now your money that you have, okay, is gonna be 540.8. That is the amount of money you have after 6 months. This is after another 6 months, okay? This is after another 6 months. Right. So compare this amount with this 520 you're gonna be getting here. Remember, here in year 1 you're gonna be just having 520. So maybe compare this one and that. You can see that there is a variance there. In that compound interest, the money seems to grow much faster as compared to simple interest. And that is what is happening. Now imagine if your money is compounded quarterly. Right? If your money is compounded quarterly. Let me write it here. Compounded quarterly. Now what this means is that your interest, you're going to divide it by 4. What it means is that you're going to be earning interest 4 times in a year. After every 3 months you earn interest. If you say from January to Feb, right, you earn interest. And then January, February, March, you earn interest. And then March, April, May, after end of May, you earn interest. You can either get it at the end of the quarter or at the beginning of the quarter. But the fact is that after every 3 months, you're going to be earning interest. That is I over 4. Okay? And then if it is compounded, weekly, let's say monthly. If it's compounded monthly, that means you divide your I by 12, which means every month you are earning interest. You understand? Every month you are earning interest. And then lastly, if it is compounded weekly, then that means you divide your I by 50. Oh my goodness, sorry. You divide by 52. That means that you're going to be earning interest. It's going to be 52 times. It's gonna be 52 times. But I think you remember here, ne? I think you remember here I said 4% times the original amount. Then I got the interest to be 20. Then I added that 20 to the original, ne? Then I got 520. Actually, after 6 months here, you actually don't. The real calculation is that you don't use 4% both times. Okay, you actually don't use 4% twice, but rather what do you do? Right, so let's talk about the real calculation. Here I just wanted you to get an overview of how your money is earning interest. But in reality, right, in reality, if you invested 500 as your principal amount, and the interest you are getting is 4%. If they say semi-annually, actually what they're gonna do is that they take this interest 4%, right? They divide it by 2. So you're gonna divide it by 2, you get 2%. You understand? So that means after 6 months, after every 6 months, they're gonna be using 2%. They're gonna be saying 2 over 100 multiplied by 500, and then you get your answer is what? 5 times 2 is gonna be 10 rands. You see, you get 10 rands, né? that means that your balance is gonna be how much. Now those who are doing accounting, I'm sure they're gonna be excelling and having fun in this topic. Yeah, Mr. Rowan, you say your balance is gonna be these 10 rands plus the original 500. So this is gonna be 510. Okay, then after the next 6 months, meaning now this was maybe in June, right? And then now in December, to get how much you have, you say 2% again, but you're gonna multiply by the 510, the previous balance. Okay, so when you say 2 over 100, you multiply by that 510. The answer that you get is 10,2. It's 10,2, right? So therefore, the balance that you're gonna be having, the balance is gonna be the original 510 plus the 10 rand, 2. That means the answer that you're gonna be having is 520,2. That's how much you're gonna be having at the end of the year. You're gonna be having 520,2. So this is going to be slightly higher. This is gonna be slightly higher to the one who was having what? Who invested using compound interest, because the person is gonna be having 520. It's gonna be having 520, and you're gonna be having how much? You're gonna be having 520,2. It's not a huge difference, but the fact that you used compound interest, you have more money, you understand me? So what I was trying to say is that the interest, you're gonna divide it by 2, because you're gonna calculate interest twice in that year, and then you get that. Okay, so we don't use 4% here after 6 months and then 4% again. No, that's not how we do it. We divide the interest by 2, then we can get a new interest we're gonna be using to get our balance for the 2 times in a year. If it is quarter, we divide the interest by 4, then we get the new interest we're gonna be using to calculate your balance 4 times in a year. If it is monthly, you divide the interest by 12, then you get a new small interest you're gonna be using to calculate the balance every month. Okay, but you always use the previous balance when you are saying, when you say interest times, you're gonna always be using the previous balance all the time. You use the previous balance. That's what is compound interest. So you can see that there's a slight variation to someone who was using simple interest. Okay, but then that is exactly that. So guys, I hope we are in an understanding of actually what is compound interest and how is it different from simple interest. So compound interest, 2 things that are a bit different, né? Or rather, I can say the major difference is that money can grow multiple times in a year, multiple times in a year. And then another thing is that it not only grows multiple times in a year, né? Interest is always calculated on the previous balance. Interest, when we say that percent, you always multiply it with the previous balance. Interest is always calculated on the previous balance. On the previous balance. All right, so that's what makes it different. While here interest is calculated using the original amount you put in. Is calculated using the original amount you invested. Original amount invested. Okay, that is the major difference between simple interest and compound interest. And then I'll always make this example. Let's say you invested 1,000 rands in a bank account, right? And then you leave that money for 15 years. The problem with the compound with simple interest is that every year they're adding interest using the original 1,000 you invested. While for compound, if maybe in the 10th year you have accumulated 30,000, they're gonna give you interest using that balance. So they will say interest times that balance you have. Therefore, your interest keeps on increasing. That's the beauty about compound. Okay, so now that we know that, right? I'm doing this because there are questions that you're gonna be asked that are directly from grade 11, which are gonna ask you on compound interest, and changing timelines and the likes. So unfortunately, we do have to know how to deal with grade 11 finance. Okay, so we're just gonna try and look at a few examples on that. Now let's have a question here, right? I'm gonna just try and type it because I know my handwriting is a bit. So now Jonathan invested 6,000 in a bank, offering him 3.5% per annum compounded annually. So that should tell us already that here we're dealing with 6,000 rands as our principal amount, right? So we can already list the variables that we have. Principal amount is 6,000 rands. And then we are further told that the interest was 3.5% per annum, which means if you divide that by 100, I believe you should get 0.035. I believe you should get this. Right. And then they said there are withdrawals, there are deposits, there is withdrawing again. Now, if you find yourself having that, you need to work with a timeline because it's going to be difficult to visualize this. So how do you then draw your timeline? Usually this is what I then do. First of all, I'm gonna decide, or rather check, whether are we working in years or are we working in months. It's quite important to distinguish between the two. So in this case, we are working in years. Now, since they said 15 years later, right, and then he is withdrawing after some years, depositing after some years, so that means we're working in years. So I'll say T0 to represent the day he made the investment, maybe to T15 to represent after 15 years. Now, that means that's what I have. I have T0 to T15 to represent the total number of years. Then what is the next thing that I do? I then have to look at the interest. Now, the interest was maintained at 0.05. The interest never changed, right? They never said now the interest changed. So that is a good thing. Interest will always write it at the bottom here. So you're going to say, okay, my interest never changed. It was always 0.035 divided by 1. Now one might ask, why am I dividing by 1? Because they said compounded annually, not semi-annually, not weekly, not monthly. So we divide by a 1. Now we were told that this guy, after 3 years, he withdrew some money. So I have to show that. So after 3 years, we'll be moving maybe from here to there. So let me just write T3 here. After 3 years, what did he do? He withdrew 500 rands. So I must show it with a red line that he withdrew 500 rands after 3 years. Okay, then he deposited 1,200 4 years later. So if I check from T3 to, this is not to T4, guys, because they said 4 years later, right? The English is quite important there. Later means that after 3 years, right? 4 years after 3 years. So that means that I must add 4 years. That will be T7, right? So that will be T7. What did he do there? He deposited 1,200. So it means here he added 1,200. Because this money is in an account, you are allowed to be withdrawing, to be depositing. Okay, so then what does he do? He leaves the money for it to grow. Okay, then he withdraw another 450 after a year. wow, he didn't leave it he didn't leave it for such a long time. He just left it for almost a year, and then what did he do? He withdrew another 450. So we show that here he withdrew another 450 rands. Then what happened? He then left it. How much will he have in 15 years? That means he didn't do anything after that, because we were not told that there was something he was doing there. So we want to know now, how much will he have after 15 years? So guys, if you can do this, you'll be able to visualize your problem nicely, and therefore you can make calculations quite easy. Now, dealing with this problem, you can either be using the longer method of calculating the accumulated from here to there, and then you subtract this, and then you calculate from here to there, and then you add this, and then from here to there, and then you subtract this, and then here to there, right, and then you get your final amount using the formula A is equals to P into 1 plus I N. You can be doing that. However, I prefer it in a much faster way. What is that way? It's simply doing this, guys. It's simply doing it in one step. But you need to be careful, because any mistake there, you are completely gone. So final amount is gonna be, now he started with 6,000 rands. Your focus is gonna be that when he deposited 6,000 rands, take it as if he left it for the rest of the period to T15. Okay, take it as if he left it for 15 years. Okay, so that would be 6,000 rands. He left it for 15 years. So we're gonna say 1 plus interest is 0.035 divided by a 1. Now he left it for 15 years. That means when you say n times 15 there, n times m, remember you say n times m, right? So you're gonna say 15 years multiplied by 1, which is just simply 15, right? Then he withdrew 500. Guys, just take it with its sign. It's minus 500, right? Write it exactly like that, and then you're gonna say that money from T3 to T15, it was how long? You say 15 minus 3 will give you 12. So that means this minus 500 grew for 12 years. So you put 12 there for 12 years. Okay? For 12 years. And then you look at the 1,200. You're going to say plus 1,200. Right? And then you say plus what? You see, it's going to be quite long. But yeah, you say 1 plus 0.035 can also be divided by 1. And then you say it stayed there from T7 to T15. How long is that? From T7 to T15. You say 15 minus 7, you probably should get 8. Okay? So that's what you should be having there. That's what you should be having. Now, yeah, I'm gonna try and maybe move this a bit to the left. Oh, I got it. Yeah, let's move it to the left a bit. I'm not sure if what we want here is gonna fit, but hopefully it will fit. Then lastly, now it was the minus 450. So you write minus 450. Okay, let's do this. Oops, yeah. You say minus 450, and then you say 1 plus 0.035. Now, from T8 to T15 is how long? How many years is that? Wait. Yeah, T8 to T15. 15 minus 8 is what, guys? Is 7, eh? Is it 7? Yes, it's 7. So since it's like that, we can then therefore use our calculator to get the final answer in one go, you see. So your calculator might feel overwhelmed with such a big equation, so you can just be doing this, you know, you say equal sign, you do that, you say equal sign, you do, but make sure that the signs are very much consistent there. You are using consistent signs. So if you do that, what should you get? So the final answer that I'm getting is 10,304,20. So that is the amount of money he's gonna get. In the midst of withdrawing and depositing, he's gonna get 10,304,20. So how did we get that? Just as a recap, right? So remember, all you need to do is to draw a timeline, but your timeline should be guided by number one, are you working with years? Yes, since we're working with years and he's withdrawing after years, then you can draw your timeline in terms of years. But if he's doing it in terms of months, right, you need your timeline to also be in terms of months. So you need just to be careful of that. So when you just have to check if he's withdrawing or depositing after a certain month, your timeline automatically should be in months. But if he's withdrawing and depositing after a certain year, right, or certain number of years, your timeline should be in years. I hope that is clear. So I'm gonna give you another one. Just give it a try, you know, and see if you can get it. Okay, so now here is how it is now phrased. They say he invested 6,000 in a bank offering him interest. After 3 years, he withdrew, right? He deposited 1,200. 4 years later, he leaves the money to grow before withdrawing. But now, they now add that for the first 2 years, the interest was 4% per annum compounded annually. And then the interest changed to this compounded annually for the remaining period. So how much will he have in 15 years? Give it a try. So in this question, we're told that now the interest has changed. Now this question is still just the same question, but you just have a change in interest rate. So I'm just going to repeat what I said, that if you see that this guy is investing, withdrawing or depositing, right, after some years, then your timeline should be in years. But someone might ask, what if now this person is withdrawing after some months and then deposit after some years? Yeah, just make sure everything is in months. You understand? The moment there is months involved, make sure that your timeline is talking about months, okay? Just to be on the safe side. So now, let's try to see if we can solve this. I'm just gonna draw my timeline again and then simply say that we start here on T0 all the way to T15, right? Now, like I said, it's just the same thing. So he invested 6,000, so we can put 6,000 rands here, and then it grew, right? It grew, and then after 3 years he withdrew. So we say he grows after 3 years. He withdraws some money. How much did he withdraw? He withdrew 500 rands. So remember, this was done after how long? This was done after 3 years, whereby he withdrew 500 rands. Then he deposited 1,200 4 years later, meaning from T3 we have to add 4 years. We get here to around T7. That means this money was there from T3 to T7, right? So after there he deposited how much? 1,200. Then it was left, remember, it was left to grow. Then a year later he then removed another 450. So this was left to grow for only that period from T7 to T8 before he withdrew another 450, right? another 450 rands, and then until there. So this is what we have, guys. Now remember, the withdrawal and the deposits, you write them at the top. Now we have interest rate that we're gonna write at the bottom. They said for the first 2 years the interest rate was this. So you say you have to add now T2 here. You have to add T2 and say from here to there the interest was how much? Was 4%. So which means 0.04. Okay, divided by 1 because it was compounded annually. Then it changed to this for the remaining of the period, meaning from T2 to T15 the interest now changed to 6.2%, which is 0.062, right, per annum. Okay, so this is what we have now. Now how do we get an answer if our timeline is looking like this? Well, simple. Remember, we still use the same formula, but now you must just be a bit careful. So here you'd want to say, okay, we start with 6,000 rands. Now we start with 6,000 rands. Now focus on this bottom part. Okay, the interest was this for 2 years. So you're gonna say 1 plus 0.04, right? Divide by 1, and then for 2 years, 2 times 1 is still 2. Then it changed. No, it changed from T2 to T15. So that means you make another bracket here. You say 1 plus 0.062 now. Divide by 1 is just the same thing. And then you from T2 to T15 is how long? That's 13 years. So we put 13 there. Guys, then we are done with 6,000. We go to 500. Nay, remember, we regard 6,000 as if it took 15 years in the bank. That's why when you add these two, you get 15. Just that this is to show that the interest changed. Now, we have 500. We say minus 500. Right? During the time whereby 500 was withdrawn, the interest was how much? The interest was this. It didn't change. So the interest was 0.062, and that was for how long? From T3 until T15. That is how much? That is 12 years. Right? That's 12 years. Then we are done. We go to this one. We say plus the 1,200. Now the interest, when it was deposited, the interest was still this one. So it is from, so it's gonna be 1 plus 0.062. For how long, guys? 15 minus 7 give us 8. Alright, then we have to go to the last one. Then we say minus 450 and acknowledge that the interest was this. So during that time, so it will be 0.062, and then for how long? 15 minus 8, that give us 7. So guys, this will give you your correct answer there if you put it in your calculator. So if we do that, so what I'm getting is that the person will have 14,412.18 rands after 15 years. Right, after 15 years. So yeah, that is what we have, guys. So quite interesting, eh? You just have to make sure that you draw your timeline correctly, right? Now, since you know how to work with years, right, to master these timelines, you must also know how to work with months, né? So now we're gonna do an example whereby we're dealing with months, right? I'm gonna give you the question here, dealing with months, while I'm busy checking the answers you sent for me for this last one. Okay, so for months, here's the question. So now here it reads as follows, that Jonathan invested 6,000 in a bank offering him interest. After 3 years, he withdraws 500 for an emergency, then deposit 1,200 6 months later. He leaves the investment to grow before withdrawing another 450 9 months later for personal use. For the first 2 years, the interest was this, and then changed to this quarterly for the remaining period. How much will he have in 15 years? Yeah, very good. So give it also a try, guys. Yeah, see what you can come up with. Before we can do this problem, right, there's something that we need to understand first. Yeah, there's some prerequisite knowledge that we need to know. Okay. First of all, if your interest, right, if you're dealing with your interest and then you said here I divided by 4, why do you say n multiplied by 4? Why do we have to multiply n by 4? Right? Now, this is because if your interest is in quarters, right, you want to know how many quarters you have in those years. Let me make an example. Let's say you are given 2% per annum compounded quarterly. And then we are talking about 4 years. Ne? Whichever is the principal amount, you're going to say P into 1 plus. Now, 2% is 0.02. You're going to divide by 4, right? Then you're going to say 4 years multiply by 4. Just so happened that I chose, okay, let's make it 3 years, guys. I don't know why they are being the same now. Let's make it 3 years. Ooh, and here. So, even here. So, you're going to say 3 years multiply by 4. Why do you do this? Take a second and ask yourself, why do I have to do this? Now, this is because you want to find out in 3 years, the big question you're asking yourself is, how many quarters do you have? How many quarters do we have? That's why you multiply 3 by 4, which means in the first year, right? Remember, in the first year, how many quarters do you have? You have 4 quarters. In the second year, how many quarters do you have? You have 4 quarters. In the third year, how many quarters do you have? You have 4 quarters. When you add them, 4 plus 4 plus 4, it's what? It's equal to 12 quarters in total. That is why we say 3 times 4, because it's going to give us what? 12 quarters. Ne? So, in simple terms, if you are dealing with quarterly here, on your exponent, you should have the number of quarters. Let me show you something. If I'm dealing with, let's say 2% per annum, ne? But let's say compounded monthly, then I'm dealing with 5 years. Whatever is the principal amount, I'm going to say P plus I over 12 because it's monthly. Then I'm going to say the number of years, which is 5, multiplied by 12. What is the essence of doing this? Why are we doing it? Well, this is because you want to find out in 5 years, how many months do you have? In the first year, you have 12 months. Second year, 12 months. Third year, you're still going to have 12 months in that year. In the fourth year, you're still going to have 12 months. In the fifth year, you're still going to have 12 months. Because in 1 year, you have 12 months. When you add all of them, what do you get? You get 60 months. So that's why we say 5 times 12. So that we get what? 60. So what is the essence? If my interest is divided, is compounded monthly, I should ask myself, how many months do I have in those years? Right? Why is it important to know this? What if I were to tell you that I invested 200 rands. The interest was 2% per annum, compounded monthly. Compounded monthly. Then I say, how much do I have in 16 months? How much do I have in 16 months? Let me see. I want to give you 2 minutes to do this question. right? And then you can post your answers there. I invested 200, ne? I already give you that this is my P. Then the interest I was given is 2% per annum compounded monthly. Now, how much will I have in 16 months? So, how much in 16 months? Please do that question for 2 minutes. So, to do this question, right, you'd use the formula A is equals to P into 1 plus I to the power of N. Now, the principal amount is 200, and then the interest is given as 0.02, and then they said compounded monthly, so you divide by 12. However, what should be my exponent? Well, usually you are just used to saying N times M, right? N for the number of years, but I didn't give you number of years, I gave you number of months. Now, because I'm dealing in months, because I'm dealing in months, my exponent should also talk about months. So since it's 16 months, I can just put 16. There's no need of multiplying by anything. So if I do that and then I go to my calculator, say 200 into 1 plus 0.02 divided by 12 to the power of 16, the answer that I get is what? Is 205.40. So that is the correct answer there. Yeah, I think, how many people got it there? Yeah, I think around 2 people are nearer to that answer there. So, good people, what you must just simply understand is that if here it's monthly, right? If I say half, like if I give you, I ask you the question to say how much will I have in this number of months, because it's already number of months, you put months there. You understand? So yes, I know there are those who multiplied 16 by 12. That's very, very wrong as keys, okay? Because you have to understand, we are not simply just multiplying, right? What you should ask yourself is, why am I multiplying? Remember I told you if it's 5 years, we are multiplying by 12. Why? Because we want the exponent to be in months. You understand? We want the total 5 years to be in months. That's why we're multiplying 5 by 12. But if I gave you months already, there is no need of multiplying by 12. You just put the 16. Okay. Now, I did see that a certain mister said, okay, 16 months, I'll divide it by 12 so that I get the number of years, which is okay. And then if you divide this, you get the years, ne? Then now you can go back onto the formula and say, okay, and say 200 into 1 plus 0.02 over 12. And then you say 16 over 2. Again, now you have the years. Over 12. Now you have the years. Then you multiply by the 12 now. But if you didn't make it 1.33, because I saw that you made it 1.33. If you didn't make it 1.33 and left it like this, you would have realized that actually the 12 simply cancels the 12. And then you have the 16. Man, math is beautiful. Math is really sweet. So, this leads me to this question. If I were to give you right now that the principal amount is 200, then I give you that the interest is 5% per annum, compounded quarterly. Yeah, let's say compounded quarterly. Ne? How much will I have after? How much will I have after? Let's see. Yeah, after 27 months. After 27 months, how much do I have? Yeah, good. How much do I have after 27 months? If the interest is 5% per annum compounded quarterly, the principal amount, don't worry, I'm going to give you that. This is your P-shame. I just want to know what is the final amount. right? So still try it for 2 minutes. Right. Let's quickly do it. So you would use the same formula. A is equals to P into 1 plus I to the power of n. Ne? But let's see, the principal amount is 200, and then what is the interest rate? It's 0.05, but they said compounded quarterly, so we divide by 4. Now they want to know after 27 months how much do I have. Guys, 27 months, ne? Here it's quarterly. You have to ask yourself, how many quarters do I have in 27 months? How many quarters do I have? Now be careful. Be careful. How you solve it, ne? You say 1 quarter. 1 quarter is how many months? It's 3 months. That is 1 quarter. It's 3 months. So 27 months is gonna be how many quarters? Cross multiply. 3x is equals to 27. You divide by 3. You divide by 3. Therefore, you have how many quarters? You have 9 quarters. You have 9 quarters in 27 months. So therefore, here you just simply put what? 9. Because you have 9 quarters in 27 months. So the answer that you get there, you go to your calculator. You say 200 into 1 plus 0.05 over 4 into 9. The answer that you get is 223.66. Did I see it anywhere? Oh yeah, I saw it. It's only one of you who got it there. So it's only one of you who got it there. So this is because they still use the same method. They're like, I'm used to multiply. So he said, okay, 27 months, how many years do I have? He divided by 12, and then he's going to multiply by these 4. Okay, but when you do that, when you do this, you will see that it will give you 9. Do it. Say 27 over 12 multiply by 4. 27 over 12 multiply by 4. The answer is 9. So guys, if you understand it in terms of converting whatever I'm asking you to years first, if you want to convert whatever I asked you to years first, so that you simply multiply by 4, you are more than welcome to do that. In fact, I see it as a beautiful method. Ne? But then if you understand it in terms of that, if I have quarters here, whatever I'm asking you, you must turn it into quarters. If it's monthly, whatever I have here, you must turn it into months. And then if it is weekly, if I'm dividing here by 52, whatever I have here, whether it's years or what, you must turn it into the number of weeks. They must just be the same. That's the thing. If it's quarterly, you must have number of quarters here in that period that I gave you. If it's weekly, you must have number of weeks here in that period that I want. If it's semi-annually, you must have number of half meaning how many 6 months you have in that period that I give you. But I feel like this one is actually quite a very, very good method there. Just simply take the months, you divide them by the number of years, and then you multiply by 4 if I gave you months. But if I didn't give you months, I gave you years, you simply take those years, you multiply by 4. I feel like that's a beautiful one, guys. So please try to use it. All credit to Mr. Sepale. Very good, say. I'm very quite impressed in that. Nay, you stick to your method, man. I thought you would lose it at some point, but yeah, that was very, very nice. So please, guys, just take whatever I'm asking you, ne, divide it by 12, and then multiply by, if it's quarterly, multiply by 4. If it's weekly, multiply by 52. If it's months, multiply by 12. Okay, so just like even in the previous one, you could have gotten it by doing that. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so I hope you understand that. Just turn whatever we give you to years and then multiply by those things. So let's do the corrections for the question I gave you guys, now that you know how to do that. Now this is gonna take us some time, so what I'm gonna simply do, I'm gonna have my timeline here. I'm gonna be a bit faster. So now they talked about after a certain month, and they talked about years. So immediately there's months involved, right? I prefer that you make everything in terms of months, ne? Yeah. So you're gonna say T15. Again, I want to know how much will you have in 15 years, ne? This one is not the same as what we were doing there. This one is asking you, okay, let me say it's the same, ne? But because already they talked about months, guys, I highly advise that you turn this into you can turn it into months, or you can work in years. You see, you can turn it into months, or you can work in years. But to make it easier, guys, I'm just gonna work in months. You can do it in years by dividing these months. You see here I gave you 6 months. When I just divide it by 12, then you'll have it in years. You see, in fact, I think it's gonna be much easier in that way. You know, just take whatever you are seeing as months. Let me see, there's months here, right? Just divide this 6 by 12, you're gonna get 0.5, right? And then let's go here, there's 9 months, just divide it by 12. So what is 9 divided by 12? So it's 0.75 years, you see? So in that way you'll be fine. And then 2 years, there's 2 years, and then there's but you know what, okay, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Then you have years. So that means now you can strictly work in years, T0 to T15. Now let's start. After 3 years, he invested 6,000, right? And then after 3 years, which is T3, what did he do? He withdrew 500, and then he deposited 1,200, 0.6 years later, right? Because now it's in years. So you're gonna say 3 plus 0.5 years later. So that means you're gonna have T3, then you're gonna have T3.5, whereby what did he do? He deposited 1,200, and then you move from that one. He leaves the investment to grow for another 4 before withdrawing 9 months later, which was 0.75. So you say 3.5, you add 0.75, okay, that will give you 4.225. So this is T4.25, because we are working in years, okay. What did he do there? Before withdrawing, he removed 450, and then he left it, right? Then they said for 2 years, the interest was how much? 4%. So here we must have T2. We must have T2 there, and then the interest was the same. So the interest here was 4%, which is 0.04, compounded what? Monthly. So you divide by 12, and then it changed to 0.062, compounded what? Quarterly, for the remaining of the period. How much will you have in 15 years? Now if you've made it like this, it's just solving it in a similar way we did the last time. So you're gonna have 6,000, and then you say 1 plus. Now remember, you take 6,000 as if it grew for 15 years, but the interest changed. So you're gonna start with the first 2 years and say 0.04 divided by 12. Since it was 2 years, you say 2 years multiplied by 12, because it's 12 there. Then it changed to 0.062 over 4. Ne? It's how much? The interest changed to 0.062. So from T2 all the way to T15, that is 13 years. and the interest was this. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna say 1 plus 0,062 over 4. We say 13 years multiplied by 4. Okay, then you say minus 500. 500 was there from T3 to T15, where the interest was this, right? So we're gonna say 1 plus the interest was this, 0,062 over 4. Then we multiply from T3 to T15 is 12 years. We multiply by these 4 because we want to know how many quarters are in 12 years. Then we continue, guys. We go to 1,200. Now for 1,200 we say plus 1,200, and then we say the interest was 1 plus 0,062 over 4. Now how long did 1,200 live? From 3,5 to 15. You take your calculator, you say 15 minus 3,5. That gives you 11,5. So you say 11,5, then you multiply it by these 4. Okay? Right. Then lastly is the 450. The 450 we say minus 450 into 1 plus 0,062 over 4. Now from 4,25 to 15 is how many years? You say 15 minus 4,25, so it gives you 10,75. Okay, should give you 10,75. Then you say 10,75, you multiply it by the 4. Okay, so that is how we get the accumulated amount. Okay, then I'd like to repeat that you look at the 6,000 is from T0 to T15 is the interest changed. So because it's changed, you look at the first 2 years, then you look at the 13 years remaining when the interest rate was this. Okay, so you say 13 times 4 because it's divided by 4 here, and then here for the first 2 years you multiply by 12 because it was monthly. For 500, it lives from T3 to T15, that's 12. You multiply by the 4 because it's number of years. For 1,200, 3,5 to T15, that's where you're gonna say 11,5 times 4. And then the 450 from here to there, you say 15 minus that gives you 10,75. You multiply by the 4 for the interest rate, then you get your answer. So if you put that in our calculator, 600 into 1 plus 0,04 over 12 into 24, right? And then 1 plus 0,062 over 4 into 13 times 4. Okay, and then 500 into 1 plus 0,062 over 4 in 12, 24, 36, 48, right? And then plus 1,200 into 1 plus 0,062 over 4, and then you say 11,5 times 4, then minus 450 into 1 plus 0,062 over 4 into 10,75 times 4. So that gives you a final answer of how much? 1,000. Even did I make a mistake somewhere? 1,962,81. This is the amount of money I'm getting. It's the amount of money I'm getting. But I believe we shouldn't have done anything wrong here. I believe everything was fine. But one thing, guys, that can also influence your answers is these things. You see, if you put in your calculator as 2 times 4, 13 times 4, 2 times 12, 13 times 4, sometimes I've seen my calculator giving me strange answers. So what I advise is that after you write this, it's going to be a lot of work, but do it. Write it again, but write with the answers to these things. You see, to the exponents there, so that in the calculator you don't put 11.5 times 4, because sometimes I've seen that it gives me weird answers. Okay, and I'm just hoping it's not one of those cases. But otherwise, the procedure, I hope that you saw it, guys. It's just making sure that turning everything into years. That's the motto. You turn everything into years, then you multiply that years by the compounding period. But if you want to do this in terms of months, it's also okay. You just have to know that here, instead of having T15, you say 15 times 12. So you'll have this as T. I'm just showing this for people who want to use months. 15 times 12 is gonna be 180 T, 180 there. And then this one here, 4.25 times 12 is gonna be 51 T, 51. And then here, 3.5 times 12 is gonna be 42. So this will be T, 42. And then this will be T, 36, and then this will be T24. So if you work with months, when you substitute here, remember, you don't substitute those months, but you substitute the number of quarters. Okay, so if it's monthly here you'd simply put 24. You see, because it's already monthly. But if it's quarterly, right, I can't put, because quarterly I won't put and get it from T2 to T15. 180 minus 24 is how many months? 180 minus 24 is how many months? Is 156. Now I want to know how many quarters are in 156 months. I have to divide by 3. Then I get 52, which is the same answer that you get when you say 13 times 4. It's gonna be 52. So guys, it's gonna depend on how you want to interpret it. You want to interpret it in terms of years, or you want to interpret it in terms of months. But if you decide to do it in terms of months, make sure that you understand that the number you write here is the number of quarters or 6 months or months or weeks that are in those, that number you put there. I hope you get me, guys. Just as I was showing you, don't know why it's so difficult to put it in words, but I'm just saying they must be the same. If it's quarters here, it should be quarters. If it's months, it should be months. If it's weeks, it should be weeks. You understand? That's if you decide to work in months. But if you decide to work in years, it's still okay. It's just a matter of multiplying by the denominator there, your number of years. So I don't know which one will work for you guys, but otherwise, this is how you deal with all the grade 11, number line, timeline type problems, right? They might be a bit complex than this. Just follow the same procedure there. So next time we'll be talking about compound decay, and thus look at future value in our next lesson. So from me today, we are out.